the cowboy who died for love, and awoke to three Apache spirits' Wild West story. Wooden buildings lined the main street, their facades worn from years of sun, wind, and the occasional storm. Horses' hooves clattered on the dirt roads, and the wind often carried the scent of pine from the nearby hills. In this small town, life moved slowly, but that didn't mean it was dull. Every person had a story, and every story had its own kind of magic. Among the townspeople, there was a young cowboy named Eli Carter. He was tall and strong, with dark hair that curled slightly under his wide-brimmed hat, and eyes that seemed to reflect both the calm of the river and the storm of the open plains. Eli was known for his courage, his kindness, and a sense of loyalty that was rare in the wild, often unforgiving life of the West. He could ride a horse faster than anyone in the county, rope cattle with skill that left others amazed, and yet he carried a gentle heart, especially when it came to love. Eli's heart had been captured by Clara, the schoolteacher of Red River. She was unlike anyone Eli had ever met. Clara had a smile that could light up the dimmest room and eyes that seemed to see the best in everyone. She had a way of making the children laugh while teaching them to read, and she treated every person in town with warmth and respect, no matter their age or wealth. To Eli, Clara was not just beautiful, she was extraordinary. Every moment he spent with her felt like a glimpse of something he had always dreamed of but never believed possible. Their love had begun simply. Eli would ride into town after a long day on the range, dust covering his clothes and sweat on his brow, and he would find Clara in the small schoolhouse or tending the garden near her home. They began to talk, first about simple things, the weather, school, and the animals they loved, then about hopes, dreams, and the quiet moments that mattered most. Each word, each laugh, each glance built a bond that grew stronger with every passing day. Eli had never felt this way before, and Clara, too, found a sense of safety and happiness in Eli's presence. However, their love was not without challenges. Clara's father, Mr. Thompson, was a strict man, deeply protective of his daughter. He had watched Eli for years and thought of him as too reckless, too restless, and too unpredictable to be a suitable partner. He worried that Eli's life on the range, his daring rides, and his willingness to face danger would bring nothing but trouble. He often reminded Clara that the West was unforgiving, that men could disappear or be hurt in the blink of an eye, and that she needed someone steady and reliable. But Clara could see the goodness in Eli, the bravery and the honesty that no warning could hide. She believed in him fully, even when the world seemed to disagree. One afternoon, as the sun began its slow descent and the sky turned shades of pink and orange, Eli found Clara sitting beneath a large oak tree near the edge of town. He dismounted, brushing the dust from his coat, and smiled at her. She returned the smile, her eyes sparkling with the warmth of 1,000 sunsets. They talked for hours, sharing stories and dreams, imagining a life together in a place where the wild wind could blow freely and the world felt safe, even for just a moment. Eli held Clara's hand and promised her that he would always protect her, that no danger or hardship would ever come between them. She rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the strength in his arms and the sincerity in his words. Life in Red River went on, with its daily routines and small adventures. Eli worked hard on the ranches, helping neighbors and riding through the open plains, but he always made time for Clara. Sometimes he would bring her wildflowers he found along the trail. Other times he would bring fresh milk from the cows he tended. They laughed, they dreamed, and they built a connection that felt unbreakable. The townspeople noticed their love and often spoke of it with a mix of admiration and curiosity. Everyone knew that Eli cared deeply for Clara, and they could see that she felt the same for him. Yet, even in moments of happiness, the West carried a sense of unpredictability. Outlaws roamed the lands beyond Red River, storms could rise without warning, and the desert heat could test even the strongest. Eli understood these dangers, but he was not a man to back down from life's challenges. He believed in facing hardship with courage and in protecting those he loved at any cost. Clara, too, learned the strength in patience, waiting for him, trusting him, and knowing that love sometimes required bravery that went beyond words and gestures. One evening, as the town prepared for a small celebration marking the harvest season, Eli and Clara walked through the streets hand in hand. Children played with makeshift toys, merchants sold fruits and goods, and the air was filled with laughter and music. Eli looked at Clara, feeling a deep sense of peace and purpose. He knew that life was fragile, that happiness could be interrupted at any moment, but he also knew that love was worth every risk. Clara smiled up at him, sensing the unspoken promise in his eyes, and felt a warmth in her heart that made the world seem brighter. Their love grew stronger with each passing day, but there was always an unspoken understanding that the West could be harsh and unforgiving. Eli often rode to the edges of town, checking on distant ranches, guiding cattle, or simply enjoying the solitude of the plains. Each ride reminded him of the dangers that lurked beyond the familiar horizon, but it also strengthened his resolve. He loved Clara not only with words but with actions, showing her that his commitment was steadfast. Clara, in turn, encouraged him, supported him, and shared in his dreams of a future together. As the sun set over Red River, painting the sky in brilliant hues of gold and crimson, Eli and Clara sat beneath the oak tree once more. The wind rustled the leaves, carrying a soft, calming sound that seemed to speak of hope and promise. Eli took Clara's hands in his, looking deeply into her eyes. "No matter what happens," he said, "I will always be here for you. Nothing will ever come between us, I swear it." Clara's heart swelled with love and trust. She rested her head on his shoulder, feeling that, for the first time in her life, the world was exactly as it should be. In that moment, everything seemed perfect. The town of Red River, the golden plains, the laughter of children, and the love between Eli and Clara created a world that felt untouched by danger or sorrow. But deep in the shadows beyond the town, unseen by anyone, forces of fate were already moving. The West, with its beauty and peril, was about to test their love in ways neither of them could imagine. Yet, even with the challenges ahead, Eli's courage and Clara's faith in him would become the guiding lights that could not be extinguished, not by fear, not by danger, and not even by the harsh hand of destiny itself. Eli Carter, the young cowboy of Red River, and Clara, the schoolteacher with a heart full of kindness, had begun a story that would be remembered long after the dust settled. Their love was not just a bond between two people. It was a force that would face trials, overcome dangers, and ultimately prove that the heart's true strength could shine even in the wildest, most unforgiving corners of the West. And so, as the stars began to appear one by one in the vast, open sky, Eli and Clara held each other close, ready to face whatever the future might bring, knowing that their love was a light that could never be dimmed. The morning sun rose over Red River, spilling golden light. Across the quiet town, the streets were still, except for the occasional creak of a wagon wheel or the soft neigh of a horse. Birds chirped from the rooftops, and the smell of fresh bread and coffee drifted from the small bakery near the town square. But for Eli Carter, the calm morning carried a sense of urgency. Today, he had promised Clara he would meet her at the edge of the canyon, a place they both loved for its beauty and solitude. It was a place where they could escape the world, even for a little while, and simply be together. Eli saddled his horse, brushing the dust from its coat and checking the ropes and saddle. He had ridden these trails countless times before, but today felt different. There was a tension in the air, a subtle whisper of danger carried by the wind. He shook off the feeling, reminding himself that the West always had its quiet moments before storms, both of nature and fate. He adjusted his hat, mounted his horse, and urged it forward along the winding trail that led to the canyon. The sun was warm on his back, and for a moment everything felt peaceful, like it always had, with Clara waiting for him. Clara, meanwhile, waited beneath a tall, solitary pine at the canyon's edge. The wind played with her hair, and she traced patterns in the sand with her fingers, imagining the adventures they could have together. She loved these quiet moments with Eli, far from the judgment of others, far from the worries that always seemed to follow them in town. In her mind, she pictured their future: a small home near the plains, horses grazing nearby, and the laughter of children filling the air. Every beat of her heart reminded her of the love she and Eli shared, a love she knew was strong enough to face anything. But fate is rarely so gentle. As Eli rode along the trail, he noticed movement in the distance, shadows flitting between the rocks and bushes. His instincts, sharpened from years of riding the open plains and facing danger, told him something was wrong. He slowed his horse, scanning the canyon with sharp, careful eyes. A sudden rustle of leaves, the crack of a branch underfoot, and then a figure appeared from behind a boulder. Eli reached for his revolver, but before he could fully react, more figures emerged. Outlaws, men with hard faces and cold eyes, their intentions clear. They had come for Eli, seeking revenge for a past dispute he had with them, though he had long thought those days behind him. The ambush was sudden and fierce. Eli acted quickly, pulling his horse to the side and firing shots that echoed across the canyon walls. Dust kicked up around him as he tried to maneuver, his heart pounding not only with fear but with the thought of Clara. He knew he had to survive, not just for himself but for the woman he loved more than life itself. The outlaws advanced, their shouts and laughter mixing with the sounds of gunfire and the whinnying of frightened horses. Eli's experience as a cowboy, his skill with a rope and revolver, and his quick thinking allowed him to hold them back, but he was outnumbered and the danger was growing by the second. As the skirmish continued, Eli's thoughts kept returning to Clara. He remembered her smile, the way she looked at him with trust and hope, and it gave him a surge of determination. He could not fail her. With a swift maneuver, he tried to lead the outlaws away from the canyon where Clara waited. He urged his horse faster, using every trick he knew from years of riding to stay ahead. But one of the men anticipated his move, raising a rifle. A shot rang out, and Eli felt a sharp pain in his side. The world seemed to tilt around him. Dust and blood mixed as he struggled to stay upright in the saddle. His vision blurred, and the sound of the outlaws, laughter and shouts became distant echoes. Finally, Eli managed to drag his horse behind a large boulder, leaning against it for support. He tried to rise to continue fighting, but his strength was failing. The pain in his side was unbearable, and he realized that he could not go on much longer. Thoughts of Clara filled his mind, her face, her laughter, her warmth, and he felt a profound sadness at the thought of leaving her. But even in the face of death, Eli's courage did not falter. He reached into his pocket and clutched the small locket he had given her, a token of their love, pressing it to his chest. The love they shared gave him a strange sense of peace, even as darkness crept closer around him. By the time the outlaws had gone, Eli lay still, barely conscious, hidden among the rocks. The wind carried the scent of sage and pine, and the canyon walls seemed to whisper in strange, haunting tones. Hours passed, or perhaps it was only moments. Time seemed to stretch and bend in a way that felt unreal. Clara, growing worried when Eli did not arrive, had begun searching the canyon. She called his name, her voice echoing against the rocks, but there was no answer. Her heart pounded with fear as she raced along the trails, hoping against hope that he had merely been delayed. Eventually, she found a small, dusty spot near a boulder where Eli's hat had fallen and his horse had wandered, restless and unbridled. Her heart sank and tears filled her eyes. The locket he always wore was on the ground, and she picked it up, clutching it tightly to her chest. The realization hit her like a storm. Eli was gone. She screamed his name, her voice raw with grief, but the canyon only returned an empty echo. For Clara, the world had suddenly become colder, emptier. The love that had been her guiding light now seemed snatched away, leaving a darkness she could not comprehend. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the canyon, something extraordinary began to occur. A strange, soft light appeared, hovering over the rocks where Eli had fallen. It was not the light of fire or lanterns, but something otherworldly, almost as if the canyon itself was breathing. The wind whispered in tones that sounded like voices, faint and melodic, carrying words that Clara could not understand, but that felt deeply familiar to Eli. The air shimmered with a strange energy, and the stars began to appear early, twinkling in patterns that seemed to tell a story beyond human understanding. In that otherworldly light, Eli's spirit stirred. Though his body lay still, something within him awoke, a feeling both frightening and awe-inspiring. He was neither fully alive nor completely gone. His mind felt clear, his senses sharper than ever, and he realized that he could see beyond the canyon, beyond the borders of life itself. Shadows moved, not with malice but with purpose, and Eli understood that his journey was far from over. Though he had been struck down in the physical world, there were forces beyond his understanding guiding him, waiting for him to learn, to grow, and perhaps to return. Clara, unaware of this miraculous event, sat by the boulder, holding the locket close and whispering Eli's name into the wind. She felt a strange sense that he was still near, that the bond they shared could not be broken even by death. Though grief weighed heavily on her heart, a small flicker of hope glimmered in her chest, as if the universe itself were telling her that this was not the end. In that quiet, tense moment, the canyon seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next chapter to unfold. And so, as the night settled over Red River and the canyon lay bathed in silver moonlight, the story of Eli Carter and Clara was poised at the edge of a great mystery. Eli's courage, love, and devotion had brought him to the threshold of something extraordinary. Though he had been struck down in an ambush, he had not truly left the world. And as the stars shone brightly overhead, the winds whispered their secrets, and the canyon held its ancient magic, the journey of the cowboy who died for love, and the challenges he would face beyond life, was only just beginning. Eli opened his eyes and felt the world differently. He was no longer lying among the dusty rocks of the canyon, yet he was not fully alive either. The air around him shimmered with colors he had never seen before, like sunlight passing through crystal, casting patterns on everything it touched. There was no wind, no sound of the town, no horses, no cries, only a quiet, heavy peace that made his heart beat in a way that was almost gentle enough to forget the pain. He tried to move, and though his body felt light, his mind was alert. Something extraordinary had happened. He had crossed a threshold between life and death. Before him appeared three figures. They were unlike anyone he had ever seen. They wore traditional Apache attire, but their presence was unlike that of ordinary people. They seemed to glow faintly, their eyes filled with wisdom and something Eli could only describe as power, the kind of power that commanded respect without ever needing to shout. The first figure was tall and broad-shouldered, holding a long staff adorned with feathers. The second wore a robe decorated with intricate patterns, and the third seemed the youngest, though his gaze carried a quiet intensity. All three looked directly at Eli, and though he could not explain it, he felt a sense of calm wash over him. "You are here for a reason," the first spirit said, his voice low but strong, echoing in a way that felt both inside and outside Eli's mind. "You have lived a life of courage, yet there are lessons you have yet to learn. Your time among the living is not finished. You have been granted a chance, a rare gift, because of the love you hold in your heart. Eli listened, feeling the weight of their words. He wanted to ask why, how, or what would happen next, but no sound came out of his mouth. He realized then that this world operated on a different kind of understanding, a connection beyond speech. The second spirit stepped forward. We are the guardians of this land, its people, and its stories. We carry the lessons of courage, wisdom, and protection. You will need these lessons to complete the path before you. Your life was interrupted by violence, but your spirit is strong. You can learn and you can return, but only if you embrace what we will teach you fully. Eli felt a mix of awe and fear. He had always considered himself brave, but now he understood that courage was more than standing in front of danger. It was about facing truth, wisdom, and the unknown, even when his heart trembled. The third spirit, who seemed the youngest yet held the deepest gaze, spoke softly. You love Eli Carter. That love has saved you in ways even you cannot imagine. Love is not only the bond between you and Clara, it is the force that will guide you, that will teach you patience, courage, and strength. To return fully to life, you must learn to carry love not just as a feeling, but as a power that shapes your choices. Eli felt tears welling in his eyes. Clara, the thought of her had been the only light in the darkness of the ambush. The idea that love itself could guide him filled him with hope, but also with responsibility. The first spirit gestured toward the distant horizon, where strange shapes of mountains and rivers seemed to bend and shimmer. Your lessons will begin now. Courage is not measured by the number of enemies you face or the battles you survive. It is measured by the strength to protect, to endure, and to face what you fear most. You will encounter trials, not just of body, but of heart. To succeed, you must trust yourself, trust your love, and trust the guidance we provide. Eli's chest tightened. He realized this was more than a test of skill or bravery. It was a test of his soul. The second spirit raised his hand, and the world around Eli shifted. Suddenly, he saw scenes of the past, moments from Red River, moments of choice, moments where small acts could have changed the outcome of events. He saw the fear in Clara's eyes when he rode into danger, the worry of the townspeople, and the moments when he had acted impulsively. The spirit's voice echoed in his mind. Wisdom is understanding the consequences of your actions. You must learn to see beyond the immediate, to make choices that protect life and love alike. Eli realized he had been brave but sometimes reckless. He felt a deep desire to do better, to learn, to prepare for the chance to return. The third spirit, watching Eli closely, began to guide him in a way he could feel rather than hear. Images, feelings, and flashes of memory flowed into his mind. He felt Clara's fear when she thought he was gone, her love that never wavered, and the strength of their bond. He understood now that love was not just for the moments of happiness, but also a shield in times of despair. Every decision, every act of courage must be fueled not by pride or bravado, but by the desire to protect and nurture what he cherished. Eli felt a warmth growing within him, spreading from his chest to every part of his being. For what felt like hours, the spirits guided him through lessons. They placed him in imagined situations, testing his judgment. In one vision, a child was trapped in a burning cabin, and Eli had to decide whether to risk his life to save them. In another, Clara faced a dangerous situation, and he had to find a way to protect her without exposing himself unnecessarily. Every scenario was designed to teach him something beyond what he had learned as a cowboy. Courage, wisdom, and love were intertwined, and Eli realized that surviving the West required more than skill with a rope or a gun. It required a heart strong enough to face impossible choices and a mind clear enough to act with intention. As Eli progressed through these lessons, he began to feel stronger. The pain from the ambush had vanished, replaced by a feeling of clarity and purpose. He could see the threads of life connecting people, events, and choices. He understood the consequences of actions before they happened, the ripple effect of decisions that seemed small but carried immense weight. The spirits watched silently, guiding him, correcting him, and offering insight whenever he faltered. Eli learned humility and patience, realizing that true strength was not measured in physical skill alone, but in the balance of heart, mind, and spirit. Days in this strange place felt like both an instant and a lifetime. Eli encountered visions of the outlaws who had attacked him, but instead of seeking vengeance, he learned to see their lives in context, the choices that led them to violence, the struggles they faced, and the emptiness that drove them. The spirits whispered that compassion was a form of courage, that understanding others did not weaken him but made him stronger. Eli felt a shift within himself. He was no longer just a cowboy fighting against external threats. He was a protector, a learner, and a man capable of deep empathy and love. Finally, the three spirits gathered before him, their eyes shining with approval. "Your lessons are nearly complete," said the first spirit. "Courage, wisdom, and love are now part of you, but one final test remains. You must prove your heart is strong enough to return fully to the living world. Only then can you reunite with what you love and fulfill the path that has been set before you." Eli nodded, feeling determination surging within him. He was ready. He was no longer the same man who had been struck down in the canyon. He carried the lessons of the spirits, the love for Clara, and the understanding that his life was not only his own but connected to all he cared about. The third spirit stepped forward, placing a hand on Eli's shoulder. "Remember this, what you have learned is a gift. Use it wisely. Your love will guide you, your courage will protect you, and your wisdom will lead you. You will return, but life beyond this place is fragile. Guard it with the heart of a man who knows its true value." Eli closed his eyes and took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of their words and the energy surrounding him. The light intensified, wrapping him in a cocoon of brilliance, and then, with a sensation both thrilling and terrifying, he felt himself drawn back toward the living world. When Eli opened his eyes again, he was no longer in the surreal, glowing realm. He was lying in the canyon where Clara had found his locket. The sun was beginning to rise and the wind whispered gently across the rocks. His body felt real again, solid and alive. He looked around and saw Clara, kneeling nearby, tears on her cheeks, clutching the locket. For a moment, neither of them spoke, both overwhelmed by the miracle of his survival. Eli wanted to reach out, to tell her everything, but he realized that some experiences were meant to remain sacred, lessons carried quietly in the heart. Eli slowly got up, dusting himself off, and approached her. Clara looked up, eyes wide with disbelief as he smiled softly. "It's me," he said, his voice steady but gentle. She threw herself into his arms, crying and laughing all at once. In that embrace, they both felt the depth of what had happened, even if they could not fully explain it. Love had endured, courage had been tested, and Eli's heart, strengthened by wisdom and guided by spirits, had returned to the world, ready to face whatever came next. The canyon was quiet once more, holding its secrets among the rocks and shadows. But Eli knew, deep in his soul, that his life would never be the same. He carried the lessons of courage, wisdom, and love, and he was determined to use them not just to protect Clara, but to live a life worthy of the second chance he had been given. And so, with the sun rising high, painting the canyon in gold, Eli Carter, the cowboy who had died for love, began his next chapter, one filled with hope, purpose, and a heart that had learned the true meaning of strength. Eli awoke to the warmth of the sun and the smell of pine, drifting through the canyon. For a moment, he simply breathed, feeling every sensation with a clarity he had never known. The pain from the ambush was gone, replaced with a strange strength and focus. He looked around, taking in the familiar landscape of Red River's canyon, and felt a mix of relief and urgency. He had survived death, learned from the spirits, and now it was time to return to the living world fully. But he also knew that the lessons he had learned, courage, wisdom, and love, were not just for understanding. They were meant to guide his actions, to help him make the town and the people he loved safer and stronger. As he mounted his horse and began riding back toward the town, Eli felt a sense of purpose that went beyond himself. He had always acted bravely in dangerous situations, but now his courage was tempered with wisdom. He thought of Clara, and a warm determination filled him. He would protect her, not only from the obvious dangers of the West, like outlaws or wild animals, but also from harm that came from fear, misunderstanding, or stubborn pride. He knew he could no longer act impulsively. Every decision mattered, and his love for Clara gave him the clarity to act rightly. The first trial came sooner than he expected. As he approached the town, he saw smoke rising from the outskirts. A small barn was on fire, likely caused by a stray ember from a blacksmith's forge. The flames were climbing quickly, and inside he could hear the frightened cries of a young child. Without hesitation, Eli urged his horse forward, racing against time. Remembering the lessons of courage from the first spirit, he did not hesitate or falter. He knew that acting swiftly was necessary, but he also needed to be smart. He tied his horse to a sturdy tree, grabbed a rope, and ran toward the barn. Inside, the fire was spreading, the heat intense, but Eli felt calm in the knowledge that courage alone would not be enough. He had to be precise and careful. Eli found the child hiding under a stack of hay, trembling with fear. "It's okay," he whispered. "I've got you. You're safe now." He lifted the child carefully and carried them outside, dodging falling beams and flames. Once outside, he handed the child to a neighbor who had come running, and watched the flames consume the barn. Though the barn was lost, the child was safe, and Eli felt a sense of fulfillment. The first lesson had been tested. Courage was not just about standing up to enemies. It was about acting decisively to protect life, even when the outcome was uncertain. Word of Eli's bravery spread quickly through Red River, though few understood the full story of his return. Some whispered about miracles, others about luck, but Eli said nothing. He had learned from the spirits that wisdom included knowing when to act openly and when to move quietly. The next trial came that same week, and it tested his judgment rather than his physical courage. A group of outlaws had planned to rob the town's bank, hoping to escape with gold and silver before anyone could stop them. Eli observed from a distance, remembering the visions the second spirit had shown him. He could anticipate the outlaws' moves, but he had to act in a way that protected everyone, not just himself. Eli rode silently to the outskirts of town and devised a plan. Using ropes, barrels, and clever distractions, he set traps and guided the outlaws toward positions where the sheriff and townspeople could safely capture them. He stayed in the shadows, careful not to reveal himself fully, knowing that the wisdom of patience and foresight was as important as courage. By nightfall, the outlaws were captured without any harm coming to the town or its residents. Eli felt a quiet satisfaction. This was a new kind of bravery, one that relied on thinking, planning, and understanding, rather than raw strength. Yet the most challenging trial was yet to come. Clara's father, Mr. Thompson, had always been wary of Eli, and despite seeing his bravery, he had never fully trusted him. One afternoon, Eli learned that a misunderstanding had placed Clara in danger. A band of rustlers had encircled the nearby fields, and in their panic, Clara had wandered too close to where they were camped. Eli knew he had to act, but this was different from the previous trials. It was not about saving strangers or property. It was about protecting the woman he loved while also respecting her father's wishes and keeping her safe without causing panic. Riding swiftly, Eli arrived just as Clara had spotted the rustlers. Her eyes widened with fear, and for a moment, Eli felt the weight of the spirit's lessons press upon him. He had to combine courage, wisdom, and love in one moment, making choices that could save her life without causing chaos. He dismounted and approached calmly, speaking in a low, steady voice. "Clara, stay behind me," he said. "I know a way out, but you must trust me." She nodded, her trust in him absolute. Using his knowledge of the land, Eli guided her along a hidden path, avoiding the rustlers entirely. Every step tested his nerves, but he remembered the third spirit's lesson. Love was not just feeling, it was action. Protecting Clara required him to focus, to act with heart and intelligence. When they finally returned safely to town, Clara embraced him, tears in her eyes. "I knew you would come," she whispered. Eli smiled gently. "I promised I would always protect you," he said, his voice calm but filled with emotion. In that moment, he understood that love could guide courage, that wisdom could shape bravery, and that every action mattered in ways that could ripple across time and life. Mr. Thompson, witnessing from a distance, finally saw the depth of Eli's character. He nodded silently, a gesture of acceptance and respect. Eli's final trial had not been a fight against physical enemies, but a test of heart, and he had passed. Days turned into weeks, and Eli continued to demonstrate his lessons in everyday life. He helped neighbors rebuild after storms, guided lost travelers safely through the plains, and continued to support Clara in all her endeavors. The town began to notice the change in him, not that he had become stronger in appearance, but that his actions carried a depth and patience that had not been there before. Eli's experiences with the spirits had given him more than bravery. They had given him purpose, clarity, and a profound understanding of life, love, and responsibility. Even in quiet moments, Eli reflected on the lessons he had learned. Sitting beneath the oak tree where he and Clara often met, he thought about the spirits and the visions they had shared. He realized that the challenges he had faced were only a beginning. Life in the West would always bring danger, unpredictability, and hardship, but now he had the tools to meet them with balance and grace. Courage was action in the face of fear, wisdom was understanding the consequences of every choice, and love was the guiding force that gave meaning to everything he did. Clara noticed the change as well. She saw the patience in his eyes, the calm in his demeanor, and the thoughtfulness in every decision he made. Their bond deepened, not only through shared love but through shared understanding. Eli no longer needed to prove himself through danger or recklessness. His strength lay in his character, his heart, and his commitment. Together they laughed, planned for the future, and cherished every moment, knowing that life could be fragile yet beautiful, and that love could endure even the darkest trials. By the time the first snow of the season fell over Red River, Eli had completed the lessons the spirits had set before him. The town, once quiet and ordinary, had become a place of stories, lessons, and hope, shaped by a young cowboy who had faced death and returned stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. The outlaws, the fires, and the dangers of the West had tested him, but it was love that had guided him through every challenge. And as he and Clara stood together, looking at the falling snow, Eli felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for life, but for the chance to live it fully with purpose and heart. Eli Carter had learned that true courage was not in defeating enemies, but in protecting others. That wisdom was not just knowledge but understanding, and that love was the force that gave life its deepest meaning. The town of Red River would remember him not only as a cowboy who fought bravely, but as a man whose heart and soul had been tested and strengthened by trials, whose lessons would continue to inspire long after the dust of the West had settled. And though challenges would surely come again, Eli now faced the world with the strength of a man who had died, learned, and returned to live fully, ready to embrace the next chapter with Clara by his side. Winter was fading, and the first signs of spring appeared in Red River. Small green shoots pushed through the thawing soil, and the air carried a fresh, earthy scent. The town had grown quiet after the trials of the previous months. The fires, the outlaws, and the dangers that had once threatened Red River were behind them, yet a sense of anticipation lingered. Eli Carter, now stronger, wiser, and full of courage and love, knew that his greatest challenge was still ahead. The final test that would prove his heart was ready not only to survive, but to live fully with Clara. One crisp morning, Eli was riding along the trail toward the canyon when he noticed a small commotion near the town square. A stagecoach, carrying travelers and supplies, had broken its harness near a steep slope, and it teetered dangerously close to tipping over. A group of townspeople had gathered, unsure how to act. Panic was growing, and Eli felt a jolt of urgency in his chest. Among the crowd, he spotted Clara, her eyes wide with fear. The sight of her reminded him of all he had learned, the lessons from the spirits, the courage to act, the wisdom to plan, and the love that guided every decision. Eli urged his horse forward, assessing the situation quickly. The stagecoach was filled with people, their voices raised in panic, and the horses pulling it were straining against the reins. One wrong move could send the entire coach plunging down the slope. Eli knew he had to act fast but carefully. He dismounted, securing his horse to a nearby tree, and ran toward the stagecoach. His mind worked quickly, remembering the lessons of wisdom. He had to think ahead, anticipate the dangers, and find a solution that protected everyone. Clara had stepped closer, wanting to help, but Eli gently took her hand. "Stay back," he said firmly, yet with love in his voice. "Trust me, I've got this." She nodded, understanding that his courage and wisdom were guiding him. Eli moved quickly to the lead horses, soothing them with calm words, and adjusted the harness. Sweat ran down his face, and his muscles strained as he balanced the weight of the coach and the panic of the passengers. He had faced dangers before, but this was different. One mistake could end lives. Every decision mattered. With careful skill, Eli guided the stagecoach away from the slope, using ropes to stabilize it and ensuring that the horses remained calm. The townspeople watched in awe, and Clara's grip on his hand tightened, her eyes reflecting both fear and admiration. Slowly, step by step, he led the coach to safety. The passengers clapped, some crying in relief, and the crowd erupted in cheers. Eli looked at Clara, smiling though his chest was still racing. She ran into his arms, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You did it! You saved them all!" she exclaimed. Eli held her close, feeling the warmth of her love and the satisfaction of protecting life without hesitation. But the final test was not over. Eli knew the spirits had given him a second chance, and the ultimate proof would come in a moment that would define the rest of his life. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Clara was walking toward the oak tree where they had shared countless moments. Suddenly, a wild stallion, spooked by distant gunfire, bolted through the outskirts of town. It was heading straight toward Clara, who froze in shock. Eli, sensing the danger instantly, did not hesitate. He ran faster than he ever had, fueled by courage and the guiding power of love. The stallion galloped toward Clara, hooves thundering on the earth, and she was frozen with fear. Eli leapt onto the path, reaching her just in time. With careful strength, he grabbed her, pulling her out of harm's way as the horse thundered past. The force of the moment knocked them both to the ground, and Eli shielded Clara with his body until the stallion was safely guided away. When he finally looked at her, he saw relief, admiration, and love shining in her eyes. "You always save me," she whispered, holding onto him tightly. Eli smiled, brushing dust from her coat. "I promised Clara, and I always will," he said. In that instant, he realized that the spirit's lessons had come full circle. Courage was not only about facing enemies or danger. It was about protecting those you loved, even when the threat came unexpectedly. Wisdom was not only planning ahead but understanding the heart, reading the fear in someone's eyes, and acting with clarity. And love was the strongest force of all. It guided every choice, protected every action, and gave life its deepest meaning. The next days were filled with quiet joy. Eli and Clara spent time together, cherishing every moment, planning their future, and reflecting on what they had endured. The townspeople, inspired by Eli's bravery and wisdom, began to treat him not just as a cowboy, but as a true protector and leader. Even Clara's father, Mr. Thompson, who had once doubted Eli, approached him one afternoon. With a solemn nod, he said, "I see now, Eli. You're the man I hoped you'd be. You love Clara in a way that no danger can break. She's lucky to have you." Eli bowed respectfully, feeling a quiet pride, knowing that his trials had earned not only Clara's heart but the respect of the entire town. As spring fully arrived, the town of Red River held a small celebration to honor the safety and resilience of its people. Children played, merchants laughed, and the town square was filled with music and joy. Eli and Clara walked hand in hand, their hearts light, their bond stronger than ever. Eli knew that life in the West would always bring challenges, but he also knew that together they could face anything. Their love had survived death, trials, and danger, and it had emerged stronger, deeper, and unbreakable. One evening, as the stars began to sparkle in the vast sky, Eli and Clara sat beneath their oak tree. The soft wind rustled the leaves, and for a moment everything was perfect. Eli looked at Clara, seeing not just the woman he loved but the life they had built together, the future waiting for them, and the strength they both carried. "We've faced so much," he said softly, "but I've learned something important. Love is not just a feeling. It's a choice, a courage, and a guiding light. And I promise I'll never let anything come between us." Clara rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the warmth and truth in his words. "I know," she whispered. "I trust you with all my heart." Eli's journey had started with a promise, a simple vow to protect and love Clara. It had led him through death, the guidance of the three spirits, trials of courage and wisdom, and finally, the ultimate test of love. He had returned to the living world, stronger, wiser, and more capable of fulfilling the promise he had made. The lessons of courage, wisdom, and love were now part of him, shaping every decision, every action, and every heartbeat. The town of Red River had witnessed his strength, and Clara had felt it most profoundly in the moments of danger and protection. In the months that followed, Eli and Clara married in a small ceremony in the town square. Friends, neighbors, and children gathered, celebrating not only their union but the story of bravery, love, and the power of the human heart. Eli wore a simple suit, his hat resting on a nearby chair, and Clara glowed in her modest dress, her smile radiant. When they exchanged vows, it was not just words. They were a promise strengthened by trials, guided by wisdom, and protected by love. The entire town cheered, and the story of the cowboy who had died for love, returned, and triumphed, became a legend whispered from generation to generation. Eli continued to live by the lessons he had learned. He helped the town grow stronger, taught children the value of courage and honesty, and supported Clara in her work as a teacher, ensuring that the next generation understood the meaning of bravery and love. Every act he performed reflected the guidance of the spirits and the experiences that had shaped him. And even as he faced the challenges of life in the Wild West, the harsh weather, unpredictable dangers, and the occasional outlaw, he did so with a heart fortified by love and a mind sharpened by wisdom. Years passed, and Eli and Clara's love endured. They raised a family, shared countless adventures, and became pillars of the Red River community. But Eli never forgot the lessons of that strange, mystical time when he had crossed the threshold between life and death. The three Apache spirits, the visions, and the trials were etched into his memory, guiding him quietly in moments of doubt and danger. He knew that love, courage, and wisdom were not just gifts, they were responsibilities. And he carried them with humility, strength, and devotion, ensuring that every day was lived fully and meaningfully. As the sun set over the horizon one evening, casting a golden glow over Red River, Eli and Clara sat together, hands intertwined. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying stories of the past and hopes for the future. Eli looked at Clara and smiled, knowing that they had endured more than most, that love had triumphed over death and danger, and that the spirit of courage, wisdom, and protection would always guide them. Their story, once fraught with fear and uncertainty, had become a testament to the power of the human heart and the enduring strength of true love. Eli Carter, the cowboy who had died for love and awoke to the guidance of three spirits, had completed his journey. He had faced trials, protected those he loved, and returned stronger than ever. The lessons he had learned remained with him, shaping his life, his choices, and his legacy. And as night fell over the town, the stars shining brightly above, Eli and Clara's hearts beat as one, proof that love could endure anything, even death, and emerge stronger, guiding them through every adventure that lay ahead.